finished my January Doodle Days challenge by Poetspice. I called mine Sk-Doodles. I have two more things, though, that I want to do, and since tomorrow is January the 31st, I thought I would do two videos. In one video, what I want to do is a flip-through of my Sk-Doodles, and I'll chat about them as I go through. That is not going to be this video. This video, what I want to do is a mini Sk-Doodle lesson. There was one lady out there, and I can't remember her name right offhand, who made a comment that she'd been watching my Sk-Doodles, and so she decided to try it for herself, and she Sk-Doodled a sketch of another person, and this person liked it so well that she asked for it. Now, hey, this lady obviously has talent. I haven't seen it. I don't know what it looks like, but she left that comment, and let me tell you, that just so encouraged me when my viewers say, I've been watching this and I got inspired and I decided to try it, and somebody else really liked it enough that they asked for it. And I have an idea that this person has a lot of talent anyway, but they were inspired by my Sk-Doodles. And then another person earlier on asked for a mini lesson. I know a lot of you have said you speed through these videos, and I do that on purpose because my purpose is to keep them short. I really feel like they get better view time when they're shorter because, hey, there's a lot on YouTube to look at, and so I try to speed up my videos. I find that when I'm sketching, you don't need to see me draw every little line because generally I'm not doing a tutorial. This video will be more of a tutorial, so it will be longer. I am calling this a Sk-Doodle lesson. It will be a one-time video. Unless things change, I don't plan to have a whole series of Sk-Doodle lessons. But I want to touch on a few things. I'm going to miss doing these next month. First of all, I want to go through what I've been using. Now, you can choose your own art media that you're comfortable with. Maybe you like watercolors. Maybe you like pens. Maybe you like watercolor pencils. These are the media that I've been using to do my January Sk-Doodles. And I have these biggie Stabilo pencils. I really do like these because they make really broad lines. I got these at my local art supply store. And then I have some Stabilo pencils. I have brown and black. And I also have that I've been using Faber-Castell pencils. Now I can tell the difference in these because I use them so much. You ask, are they like watercolor pencils? Generally, yes, but these are made for paper, glass, plastic, and metal. And I find that they have a watercolor pencil is a watercolor lead. Yes, you can use them on paper, but these are made for glass, plastic, and metal, and I've not used them on glass, plastic, or metal, but I do find that the texture of the media inside of it, to me, seems just a little bit, not waxy, but a little bit more smooth than a watercolor pencil. Waxy's not a good term for it, but I can tell the difference in a texture between a Stabilo pencil and a regular watercolor pencil. And it's a very slight difference, but there is a difference. And I really notice it on these biggie ones. I really like my white because after I make marks on a face, and if I go over that entire face with the broad strokes of my white, the pigment is wide enough and then when I water it down, it kind of smooths out the marks on that face. And I've done that several times on my Sk-Doodle sketches. I do use a Stabilo white. I think I also use a Derwent white. So those have been the media that I've been using. Of course, I use water. And I've been using a variety of brushes. I primarily use this brush, which is kind of like a medium round. It's a Winsor Newton Cotterman watercolor brush. And I do like it. It's a well-made brush. It gives me nice strokes. However, I do find that sometimes I need to go in to a finer line, and I will use a fine brush. And I have another one which is smaller and maybe shorter. It gives me more control, gives me a broader line. And then this brush I've been using to put the gold border around around the edges of my pages, and also to do the cover. And this is just a craft brush that's gotten a lot of use, and I really like it because the bristles are kind of flayed out, and that just comes from me using it. But I like it. I like how it does the borders. I'm using Jacquard's screen printing ink for the borders. This is not waterproof. This is water soluble. I can apply water to it and mist it and pick up the color off of my page. And all of my pages are not waterproof. All of this media is water soluble. So I intend to go through this book and spray it with a fixative. And of course I have a kneaded eraser. I do find that this kneaded eraser does not pick up entirely the lines left by my Stabilo. I can lighten the lines with it, but if I really want to pick it up, the best way to pick up those lines is with water and a brush and blotting it with a towel or whatever you're using to blot your pages with. Now, I thought that what I would do is a mini lesson, and I don't think I'm going to use my gold on this. Instead, I'm going to use Distress Stain, and you may see me reaching for this as I'm sketching. So I'm adding this media for this lesson together with everything that I've gone through. I forgot to tell you that I do use these R2 ink pens. They're R2 ink. INC. I get these 2 to a package at the Dollar Tree. And I really do like them. They are not waterproof. They are water soluble. Your ink will smear. But I like that smearing of that ink. And even after I smear it, I find that I still have my line. And so I make use of that smearing as a tonal value in my Sk-Doodles. So before I get started, I kind of want to review what is a Sk-Doodle. I don't know if there's a formal term for that. I'm calling these Sk-Doodles because one day I was doing my sketch, and as I was talking about it, I said, I want to sketch doodle, and that was the term that I used, a sketchy doodle, only it come out Sk-Doodle. So my tongue-tied terminology came out and formed the word Sk-Doodle, and when I was editing my video, I'm going, I really like that. I'm going to use it from now on. And so I've taken to call all of these little sketchy doodles Sk-Doodles. That's where that came about. So let's talk about a sketchy doodle. Why do I call them sketchy doodles? Well, because I do not spend a lot of time when I'm sketching these trying to make them look exactly like the photograph that I'm sketching them from. I try to use vintage photographs. These were sketched from, this one particularly was sketched from Tim Holt's vintage photo pack. But I do try to use vintage photos when I do this, this is one of my mother. This came from Tim Holtz. This came from Tim Holtz. I'm using them as inspiration. And that is the whole thing. I am not shooting for total realism when I do these. I am really just sitting down and having fun. Let's talk about the photo that I'm going to Sk-Doodle today. And this is something that I encourage you to do after you've chosen the photo that you're going to work from. This is a very sepia-toned photograph of a vintage photograph that I was using to do a Santa Claus doll, paper doll one year. And it's just been sitting in my stash. I probably even have the original photo. But when I took it to the copy shop, I really printed it off with a dark sepia tone on there. So that's what I'm working from. It's just been sitting in my stash. When you choose a photo to work from, spend some time looking at that photo before you start drawing. And here's something that I've started doing. Not only am I looking at the photo, I've started verbalizing. And as I'm talking to you, I start pointing to the points that I'm verbalizing from. And this is something that I want to do in all my artwork when I'm Sk-Doodling or doing a sketch project from where I'm using the inspiration photo. As I'm looking at it, I want to verbalize it because I'm finding that when I find the words to verbalize, my mind is taking mental notes about the object that I'm going to draw. And I'm hoping this camera, I can't really see, I'm hoping this camera has a good autofocus for you. But let's look at this guy here. He's got one of those beards that fall off of the bottom of his face. It almost looks like a Santa Claus beard that has a string that might tie behind his ears. But I'm finding this style of beard in a lot of these vintage photos. It might have been the style at that time. But notice his beard does not come up on his cheekbones. His beard starts underneath of his cheek. And there is a very definite line here that forms the angularity of his face. His face is long and angular. He's got fairly high cheekbones and a lot of shadow, and probably because of this photo and the way that I did the sepia on it. He's got a lot of shadow there. His eyes are very dark and deep set. He's got very, I would say, bushy eyebrows, dark, deep set shadow around both of his eyes. You do not see in this photo, you do not see the whites of his eyes, but as you look here, and I'm hoping I'm getting this close enough, as you look here, you see the white or a fairly light color of his eyelid, especially on this eye, which would be his right eye. His hair, he's got a high forehead. His hair, he does have a pile of hair on top of his head, and although it kind of fades into the photo on this side, I can still see streaks of it, and it bushes up and kind of bushes around, so I would say his hair is fairly long. And it comes down and there's shadow here and it falls over his ear here and falls over his ear here, so you're only seeing the bottom portions of his ear. His nose, he's got a lot of shadow right under his nose. He's got a lot of shadow on this side of his cheek, which helps form the line of his nose. On this side, it fades away. His lips, his upper lip, well, right underneath his nostril, you see that line going from the center of his nose to his lips. And it's just kind of like a curved ridge. And in some photos it's really evident, on others you can't see it. His upper lip has a lot of shadow. He's got a pleasant face. I wouldn't say that he's smiling with a big smile, but he's got kind of a little curvature right in here especially. And then he's got those two little marks on each side of his lips. The shadow underneath of his lip forms his bottom lip. And then he's got that white bushy beard that falls underneath of his chin. And it looks like here he might have sort of a silk tie on underneath of that beard. And then his white shirt and a dark collar coat. So by verbalizing those things, you're kind of making mental notes. You're sketching it in your mind. And I'm finding if I verbalize it, even though I don't really come out with a realistic picture that looks photographic, and here again, that's not my goal with a Sk-Doodle, I get a fair likeness of what I'm sketching. So I kind of like how, of course, I did this with when I printed it off, I did it with the software. I made an oval. I'm wondering if I want to do the same thing here. Maybe, maybe not. I will decide. The mustard seed, or it's not mustard seed, it's scattered straw. I might use that a lot to make the brown tones. I'll probably be mixing it with my brown, and I'll be using the black to do the darker tones in here. So I'm going to get started, and I'm not going to fast forward. I'm going to talk through this entire video. So this will be a longer video for those of you who appreciate the longer videos, and I'll be verbalizing what I'm thinking as I'm sketching this face. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to pull it down into a close-up so you can see my little sketch pad better. What I did here was I had a sheet of paper that was I believe it's 8.5 by 11, and this is just mixed media paper, and I cut it in half. I cut it in half vertically, and I folded those two halves, so I'm making a little flip book is what I'm doing. So I'm going to zoom in and get started, and you can sit and listen if you wish.